What'd you guys think? It's great, right? Very great. Welcome. I'm Stacey Wilson Hunt from New York Magazine and Vulture, the Hollywood editor, and I'm very honored to be here to introduce the amazing people behind this incredibly nuanced, interesting, unlike anything I've ever seen show. So without further ado, I will bring them up one by one. Executive producer and director, Jill Soloway. Executive producer, Sarah Gubbins. And we all coordinated our hairstyles tonight too, so it's very exciting. Kathryn Hahn. Griffin Dunne.
Yeah.
Roberta Colindres. And my favorite phrase that I started using at Sundance, the titular dick, Kevin Bacon. Welcome, everyone. Very happy to be with you today. So I'm going to start with Sarah. So I found an interview that you did last year with Vogue. It was a great interview, and you were talking about adapting the source material for I Love Dick. And you said something which I think all of us would probably agree with after seeing the show, which is it's not an obvious adaptation. There's nothing more boring than watching people write or read letters, which I think is an astute observation. It doesn't lend itself to inherent dramatic action, except what's going on in the life of Chris Krause's mind, and her relationship is infinitely interesting. And I do agree with you that the way you've chosen to, I guess the entry point to the book is great. So maybe tell me a little bit about why the source material and how you use the letter writing, I guess, as the narrative framework, and I guess why this book in the first place.
I mean, why this book is probably the easiest of all of those questions, which you just listed out. Why this book is because there's nothing else like it, and it's so ferocious and honest, and you can't look away from the way in which it's a narrative about a woman who is coming into her own, and the journey that she has to take to do that is not a very pretty one, you know, but one that allows an audience or reader, in the case of the book, to just want to be a part of and root for. And when Jill and I were talking about the book, that was the thing that we wanted to hold on to. You know, that was the center of it. You know, what does it look like? So more than the kind of structural form of these letters, it was like, how do you embody the thing that we're feeling as readers? And what is it gonna, what shape will it take when we get the bodies of actors into that? And so I think that's what got us out of the gate. You know, was the honesty in which she kind of traverses the entire novel.
So when you and Jill sat down to, I guess, tackle this, I can't even imagine what that first writing session. And Jill, maybe you can tell me a little bit about how you compiled your writers' staff. But what was your first step, and how did you go about mapping this out from the beginning?
Well, so Sarah wrote that beautiful pilot, and you know, I was kind of looking at it like a director, like I just really want to shoot this. I really want to shoot that restaurant scene. I want to shoot these moments. I want to get in there with a camera. And because some people think of this book as, some people have called it the invention of the female gaze in literature, meaning that it's the first time that a woman has just been a hero, but been such a total fuck up. Like
Finally.
real mess. And so I think of like the hero's journey as a writer going up a mountain. The hero's journey goes up a mountain, and sometimes I would think that the heroine's journey was about going up a mountain by going around. But in this case, I thought she was just on a heroine's journey, circling the drain, just going down. And I kept seeing it. And you read the book and you're like, okay, she's going to leave the guy alone now, right? And no, she keeps going. She keeps going. It gets more and more humiliating. Just when you think she can't be more naked in the middle of the road, she gets even more naked in more of the middle of the road. And for that sort of shape, we just thought, what would it be like to have an all-female writer's room? And so it was all women in the writers' room.
all women,
which was amazing.
And that's an historic event, I think.
We think it's historic.
Yeah.
It's an historic event.
Not a historic event.
But
Yes.
an historic
It
event.
was so really easy to do.
It was, except for Joe at Amazon was like, you need one man for the male point of view.
And we said, well, what do you
How
think?
can you write a show called Dick without any men in the writer's room?
We're right here.
What are they going to do?
Yeah. But yeah, it was great because I think a lot of the women in the writer's room had been the only woman in the writer's room on their other shows, like the only girl in the car, the only woman in the room, and had been kind of trying to play the role of like the be game, be funny, don't offend, be careful what you say. And so for them to all just be in the situation where they were faced, everywhere they looked there was another woman, it just, everybody got really loose, really fast. And we just began going downhill from there. Circling.
And Kathryn, how did it feel when they thought of you as the perfect fuck up for this show? I mean, were you totally flattered that to be thought of?
There was a moment, I think, in Transparent, maybe season 2, where Jill was like, there's a couple things with, thinking about maybe for a next move. Here's some titles if you want to. And this, of course, was the one that's, jumped out at me. I'd never heard of the book before, which after reading it, I was flabbergasted that I'd never come across it. And hook, line, and sinker, I just fell so madly in love. Like we were talking before, and there was something about, like, when I keep thinking of her journey, especially through this season, I keep thinking of Richard Dreyfuss in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Like, she just sees that mountain, and she just has to keep making it and just trying to define it. Like there is something about trying to define like what that all-encompassing draw is. And there's also something like crazy sexy and true about that little bit of madness it is when you become obsessed with something. Like yesterday you didn't have this enormous all-encompassing feeling, and today it's all you're thinking about. And like same thing with like the creative process. It's like yesterday I didn't have that, and today it's all I'm about. So I think I was really excited by that. And also that there isn't any apology or shame or guilt attached to it. It's just like a forward motion towards this want. And that it happened to be in the shape of Kevin Bacon. It did not hurt at all.
It was not a bad want.
No.
Not a bad want. Griffin, in reading the book, it's so interesting, and we'll talk a little bit about the differences between the show and the book. But your character is described as a European intellectual who is skilled in the analysis of love's minutiae, which I love that description.
I use it all the time.
Immediately, Jill thought of you when she was, thinking about Silvera. But what is it about this character that attracted you? Because it seems like a natural fit for you in some ways, but it also, I see how you might be tested kind of, he's a little goofy, which we appreciate.
Yeah. No, it was a total natural fit. I was quite late to the party on this. I mean, like a week before we started shooting.
Day before the table read.
Yeah,
Oh, really?
the day before the table read.
Another actor felt
Where
that.
I was told I had the part, by the way, and then they said, well, after we hear you do the reading. And I saw Kevin that day, and I said, I don't have the part yet.
That wasn't true, though. You did have the part.
Well, you said that, but and you are the final word. But Kevin goes, well, before I left the house, his wife Kira said, don't fuck up the table reading. They fire people after a table reading.
It was the worst thing I could possibly say.
But I took one look at Kathryn, who I'd never met before.
No, that's the first time we had met.
And it was like we'd been married 14 years.
No, it was
We were
so
already
perfect.
sick of having sex.
And I was like,
So you're saying it was a natural fit.
It was a natural fit on all levels.
And Roberta, I was I was researching your work in the theater, of which you've done so much. Fun Home, specifically, a huge career highlight for you.
Amazing if you guys haven't seen.
You said something interesting to Playbill, I think it was a couple years ago, and you said you wish theater had more diversity, not only demographically, but also in subject matter. And that you wish theater took more risks, which is so funny because I think of theater as a place where risks are taken. And I want to know, what is it about this project that is, I guess, embodies all those things that maybe you hadn't found in a lot of the theater projects you've been involved in?
I think risk, what I was referring to when I want to see TV and film and theater take on more risks, I mean, as far as the kind of people that we want to see. And I hold everybody accountable for that, not only people that make the projects, but also the people that go to see theater. I want audiences to take a risk on what they're willing to see and who they're willing to get to know. I think we're used to being told, don't talk to those people, don't talk about those people, certainly don't try to figure them out. I want to see people that are not only that are ugly or different or scared or new. I want to see real people, and I think the risk that I think in this show, especially something that Jill does really well, is kind of is giving voice to people that aren't given a voice, and it always had a voice, and finally people are beginning to want to hear it or willing to put themselves out there to hear it.
And be at the center of their own story. Essentially.
Yeah, I mean, we've, people, minorities of all sorts, have been creating stories this whole time and have been doing incredible things forever and have just never been given, the platform for it.
Very good. And Kevin, your last series regular job was in a horror show on Fox. So this is a little bit different.
Or is it?
There's a lot less blood, but how has this experience...
Stick around.
No. I've seen the whole show, so I know what you're referencing. We don't want to spoil it. The finale, we'll just say the finale is colorful. How did this experience test you as an actor, but also make you reevaluate what television means and storytelling means through this new lens?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'll first say that talking about an all-female writers' room, honestly, when it comes to leave it to a female writers' room to create two of the best, most well-rounded male characters that I've read in a really long time. I mean, both of these guys end up being definitely male and definitely complex and definitely interesting. And it's kind of like the idea that somehow you're not going to be able to deliver that is astounding to me. When you, right, Griffin? I mean, wouldn't you say? I mean,
totally.
these guys, these are real guys.
I know. Yeah. I had someone who saw the series went, my God, you're from the pilot to the end. Your trajectory to going, you're broken, but lived at the end. You're like a sexual Willy Loman.
Yeah, right.
That is sort of perfect.
So that's one thing
That's a good part.
that I really felt. I mean, in terms of challenges, I suppose the first challenge was that, Jill's got this kind of, hippy-dippy process. Of, we're walking around barefoot and it's all touchy-feely.
I've never heard about this.
Lovey-dovey kind of stuff. And, I'm so jaded at this point. I've done just, I don't know how many movies. I mean, I've done every possible thing, starting back in the 70s with being in acting school and doing this kind of stuff, That, it took me a while to come around to it, but
you guys can all do that, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we would have these moments where we look at each other during the box or during the thing and we just go, you believe this shit?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. But
That's a huge compliment.
my brilliant wife would say to me, honey, just keep your heart open, just leave yourself open. And as a result, it was creatively magnificent. You
Yeah.
know.
Wow.
So, what was the second part?
Meanwhile, I'm
remember,
like, this
but-
is how it always is, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And, well, I know this is what you were saying, but I'll also say that, you know, I've done a lot of independent films and that nobody has ever seen. You know, as an actor, as a director, as a producer, it's something I love, but something that's hard to do in this current film market. You know, but to be able to do something that feels truly like experimental, you know, and like weird and challenging and edgy and offbeat. And yeah, at the same time, it's sexy and it's funny and all that kind of stuff, but it's definitely like outside of the box. To have a place to do that is amazing. You know, it's amazing as an actor.
Yeah, at times it feels like an installation at MoMA or something, where you're just walking through from room to room and you think, I've never seen this before, I've never seen
Right.
that before. And all that patchwork amounts to something, I think, very meaningful after each episode. So my favorite line in the entire first season is in episode 2, which is directed by Kimberly Pierce, where Chris says, there's no such thing as a good female filmmaker. I think that's hilarious. And she names all of her favorites, who are all men. And she says Francis Ford Coppola, but not Sofia Coppola, and then disparages her highlights, her entitled highlights. So, what are we to learn from this quote? And obviously it's very satirical, and it's riffing on a lot of what probably all of us in this room have experienced at some point. A lot of people up here too. But Kathryn, what does that line mean to you? And did you deliver it with a lot of gusto? And
I mean, I think that poor Chris Krause in that particular moment is just lashing out with bitterness and jealousy at anyone else that has an iota of success that she doesn't experience. I mean, she would throw anyone under the bus at that moment. It's not a particularly attractive moment in the life of Chris Krause, for sure. Yeah,
It's
at
also
that
very-
moment,
yeah.
she decided to lash out at somebody's highlights, which is not, let's say, mature.
But from a writing perspective, obviously that was a very intentional line and meant to, for us to laugh at it. But what does this line mean, Sarah and Jill, when you constructed that line? Obviously you're laughing, but it's also a meaningful line. It says so much about how we feel about each other in the business, and
I think there is that feeling. I think, to be super duper honest, I mean, I think as recently as 5 years ago, I was seething at people like Sofia Coppola and Lena Dunham, and I remember seeing Lost in Translation and being like, "Rrr," you know. It's because there are so few. It feels like there are not enough spots.
Yeah, right.
It feels like there only gets to be one. You know, you go, there's Sofia Coppola.
One at a time.
And there's one at a time. There's Miranda July, or there's Lena Dunham, and all of these people, you know, I would never say anything horrible about, but I felt that feeling of like, why them and not me? And
it's very honest of you.
Thank you. And yeah, I think that happens either for women, for people of color, for queer people, because if you're a straight white man, it's kind of assumed that there's work for you out there. But everybody else, we're sort of like reaching for our moments, and then you see somebody else get it, and you can't help but go, that's my moment that person got. So, but I mean, I should say that the line as written was about Sofia Coppola. She improvised the highlights and then insisted we take it out.
Yeah.
She came to us and said, get that line about the highlights out. I don't want Sofia to be mad.
Sofia Coppola is a goddess, you guys. She is a goddess and a treasure.
Keep it. It's hilarious.
She really is.
Oh my God, that's
I felt an instant Irish Catholic guilt. She's amazing. But it also speaks to something that was in the book that I really kind of appreciated, which is this kind of the second wave feminism of there's women, we have certain things that a lot of women paved the way for, and now we're in this area of just not quite, certain things not quite happening. Certain things have, of course, happened, and thank God and thank Goddess, but there is, so it's just an acting out. I'm just why not all of it? Why is something, why am I still not feeling So, lashing out at other women. I'm saying it's not mature, guys.
No, but it is that scarcity mentality. I think that's
Well, there's so few, so there's this sense of we all have to have this continuous sisterhood with each other and support everything we all do. And whereas men don't act that way toward each other, they shit talk each other all day long. So maybe the shit talking is the new evolution.
Yeah, I like that.
No.
So I want to talk about the setting of Marfa, which is obviously not in the book. That was your invention. But I would love to know what were the biggest challenges of shooting there. Probably delicious tacos, I'm guessing, like great local food from what I can sense.
When available.
Tequila.
It's a lot of tequila.
Yeah.
But just from I guess, especially comparing to Transparent, which is so LA and so this whole area near us right now, what were the challenges of shooting there, but also how did it, I guess, impact the storytelling? And because it works, the setting is so great. It's spare, but it's also arty, but it's also kind of lonely. There's this kind of mixture of feelings going on. Maybe start with Kevin. What did you think of shooting in Marfa?
I love that town. It's one of those places where people always say, you got to go to this place because it's really not like anything else. And a lot of times I go and I say, well, it's kind of like, whatever. But I think Marfa is really singular. And from my perspective, in terms of the character, Marfa was part of what turned it into this art center was an artist named Donald Judd, who was a successful sculptor in New York City, who wanted to see his art in a more kind of desert-like setting. And he moved his art out there and bought a bunch of buildings and started an art institute and became sort of like a cowboy, like a faux cowboy, bought ranches and did that whole thing. So in a lot of ways, the Dick character is similar to Judd, and his influence is still very much felt in that town, in that place. It's one of the reasons why there is so much, kind of art there. I love the town, and I think that we all had magical kind of experiences, both in terms of like the people, the light, the landscape, the history. It's a corny thing to say. We say it all the time, but the show in Marfa is really much is a character in the show.
Absolutely. And how about you, Roberta, when you're kind of inventing Devon's backstory, and Devon is not in the book, it's another, sort of interpretation. What did you imagine was Devon's experience in Marfa? We hear a little bit about it, but you had a chance to kind of invent that.
Yeah, I'd been to Marfa before, and I knew that there's...
You're from Texas originally, right?
Yeah, from Austin.
Okay.
And I knew that there was... It's a small town. It's like 2,000 people. And I knew that there were, like, maybe a third of the people there are people that have moved to Marfa and have been seeking this kind of artistic culture that exists there, and then are people that have been there for generations. And Devon is a person who has been there her family's been there for generations, their family's been there for generations, and I wanted to, I did want to kind of live in the experience of, and I think being from Austin actually kind of also informed it. Austin, when I was growing up, was kind of hippie and really weird. Like the whole Keep Austin Weird thing was very much real. And, people kind of started moving there and hearing more about it. And I wanted to kind of remember what it was like to feel what it is to not be able to fully express yourself and not be able to fully find what it is your inspiration is when all these people are coming into your space and feeling inspired.
There's more quiet in which to...
Yeah, and what changes can happen to a person that's been somewhere and seeing and experiencing all these other people having experiences that are changing them.
It's a very, it's not easy to get to. It's really remote, and the closest airport is like 2 hours away. Three,
and
thank
a time
you.
change.
And then there's a time change.
Oh, yeah, in the change, yeah.
Yeah, and I was really struck by the, Giant is one of my favorite movies. And you can feel and you meet people who are, were kids, especially in the Hispanic community, they were extras in Giant.
Wow.
And that movie made its mark on that town. So when we arrived, decades later, the way, the production integrated the town, it struck me as a kind of a very natural thing. They just folded right into it, even though, it was a different generation of the citizens we were working with. But a film can really make a huge impact on a town. If the circus comes to town, and some people leave with the circus, and some people never forget the circus.
And half the people are in the pilot.
Yeah, and they're all in the pilot.
Right. So I have a couple clips for us to look at, but before that, I want to make sure we get a chance to talk about the music, which is so beautiful and strange and kind of the most weird mix of genres I've heard in a show. We go from a German cover of Where Have All the Flowers Gone at one point, Nina Simone covers punk, and as compared to Transparent, that just beautiful piano that we hear in Transparent. I just love it. Really brings me to this place. So maybe Sarah and Jill talk a little bit about your, I guess, vision for the music.
Yeah,
And
well,
why
actually,
these voices. And
one of the things, since this is an FYC night, one of the things I'm super excited about is that this year, for the first time, music supervisors are eligible for nominations, and so
Very cool.
I want to shout out. Yeah. So I want to shout out our music supervisor, Bruce Gilbert. You want to stand up back here and give it a He's the best music supervisor in town. He does the music on Transparent and Dick, and he's my ex-husband. We still love each other.
he's smiling.
He is, and we have such a natural way of working that from the very beginning we were just playing. He was playing music for me, and music that we could write to and listen to while we were writing. It was there from the beginning.
Did you write in LA or you wrote?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a lot of this one artist named Lasse de Sella. She's all over the season. She passed away maybe about 10 years ago.
Sad.
And she came to this show in the most magical way. She came to Bruce, and Bruce had a dream about her.
Is that the sort of flamenco voice we hear?
Yes.
That's so
and
beautiful.
then, we started feeling like Lasse was the voice of the show. And then we found out she was your wife's ex-sister-in-law.
Yeah, my sister-in-law's sister, yeah.
Weird.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
she's luckily, what Bruce does is kind of be open to the magic. I mean, I think that's this iterative process that they call the hippy dippy thing. Is for me as a creator, I'm literally feeling like I'm just kind of relaxing into all these impulses that are coming at us and gathering actors to have a sense of play around what's so much is rising, and my job is just to let it rise. And so Bruce has that as a music supervisor, and I just feel like the music is almost beyond a character in the show. I feel like in many ways the music, is the soul of the show, this soundtrack, in the same way that we were able to use films by famous and not so famous filmmakers and ask these questions. Who are the female filmmakers? Who are the female painters who haven't had their due? For Bruce to know, look, we only want to use female voices, and we want to find people who we can use in this, we can just explode through this prism. It's becomes this prism of possibility. So I'm just so excited about the music.
It's beautiful. And we see a lot of what you just discussed in a clip from the next episode, which is episode 5.
Right.
Which you directed, Short History, Weird Girls.
Yes.
A great title. And this is, for everyone's information, your official entry for Emmys this year as a director.
That's true.
So maybe let's see this clip from episode 5, and we'll talk a little bit about that.
Great, thanks.
Is there anything you want to add about that, the clip you just saw?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe specifically the art pieces that we see woven in and the film clips.
Yeah, I mean, I think, for me as a director, I'm always feeling like I have to just keep growing and challenging myself and doing things I haven't tried before. And I think the show is crazy, and this episode is batshit.
It's pretty weird.
So weird, and so much for me at the edge of what is possible in this thing we call television. And we kept going. We said, what is really the edge of what can be considered TV? Using other filmmakers' work, finding this work from these filmmakers like Naomi Uman and Colleen Smith and Petra Courtright, incorporating it in, so that so that TV could be a holder for other people's work. And then stylistically, I think, after having directed Transparent and episodes of this show, when I read the script, I felt like it called for something that I had never tried before. It almost felt like the episode was this kind of entering into evidence the experience of being female and what it means to have found a moment in your life where you became disconnected from your desire. And so these women are kind of facing the camera as if they're giving testimony about their lives and going back and witnessing moments from their life where they kind of either found or lost a connection between their desire and their body. And I was just like, I could see the photographs like being sort of offered into evidence, almost instead of to a judge, but like to the American audience. I felt like, wow, Amazon's gonna air this show or stream it, and then there's gonna be this moment where the women of the show can actually talk to everybody, address the audience. These shows are in 230 countries. I'm like, what would these women say if they could talk to audiences in 230 countries? And so, I don't know, I'm just so excited about it, and I feel like it's kind of a crazy long shot for me to say like, all right, well, I want to submit this for the directing award this year, because I just feel excited about it, because for me it's going right up to my very risk space of what I believed was possible with the form, with my technique, and yeah, just wanted to share a piece of it.
And one of the characters admits that her first love was Alex B. Keaton, and so was mine.
Oh, that's
so
true.
I felt very connected to that part.
Yeah.
And we will now see a clip from episode 7, which is a very seminal moment between Dick and Chris in a hotel room.
Yeah.
And I won't give anything else away, so let's roll to that clip from episode 7.
Amazing scene.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Coitus interruptus, guys.
So, Kathryn, we spoke a couple weeks ago about your career renaissance, I think, since your first collaboration with Jill. I think we agreed that you've seen yourself in a new light.
My reconnaissance?
Yes, your renaissance, I think we'll call it. And this scene represents, I think, something we haven't seen from you. I mean, obviously the subject matter specifically, but this sort of a risk that you're taking that maybe 5 years ago you wouldn't have taken. But what do you see when you see that scene, and how do you feel when you watch that performance?
I mean, that was such a fever, that scene, the making of it, that it's so fun to see. Ay, ay, ay. It was a whole day, almost, in this tiny, real, practical motel room in Pear Blossom, California? Am I making that up?
I don't know, yeah.
Probably totally making that up. Pear Blossom, California. But it was we were deep in the season, and it was, it was finally in her face, like, what she had been kind of gunning for, and of course it doesn't at all look like what she had really wanted it to. But it was a fun, crazy, brave, awesome day with my pal Kevin Bacon, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. We had it was, it was loose, right? I mean, it was just loose.
Yeah, they just kind of lit it. And it was also one of those dream days on this, you guys, where it was like, and Joe Lewis mentioned this when we were in Marfa at some point, where he's like, can you believe that there's a unit directed by Jill Soloway and a unit directed by Andrea Arnold?
Yeah,
and so there's all these, and Andrea Arnold, who's like a goddess as well. And so it's nutso to have the two of those women running in and out with this scene. And that was one of those, bucket list days for me, for sure. For sure.
Yeah, I agree.
The tension is still there.
It is. Oh my gosh. So we have to wrap up, unfortunately, but I did want to bring up one thing at the end. The foreword to I Love Dick is really beautiful, written by Eileen Miles. And she says that Chris Kraus her living is the subject of the book, not the dick of the title. And I love the way she put that. And I know that Chris has been supportive of the project, and obviously I would imagine her wanting to do this with you was pretty pivotal. What does her support mean to the project? And I guess, has she been involved at all? Has she given you notes? Has she seen it?
She came to the set and
she
tried to
did.
get me to do things differently. No, she came to the set and watched, and it was amazing.
It's like 50 Shades of Grey with E.L. James coming to the set.
Exactly. No, she's awesome. I mean, she's everything. She is sort of like that spirit animal for women and for feminists. I really feel like, how did we miss this writer? Why did she never rise? I feel like women never got that, like Philip Roth, that person who really spoke to the sort of ugliness.
Margaret Atwood, very timely now.
Yeah. And so, it's just, it's totally lucky that she...
We've been able to have a little bit of an email relationship, which has been such a pleasure of my life, and she's phenomenal. And I remember reading something that she said, which was a real way in for me into this too. It said she had written at some point that she had a little bit of ire about the phrase confessional writing, because she said it just implied an inherent shame or guilt about what was being written about. And that she didn't, again, like it spoke to something that was just, from my recovering Irish Catholic background, like was just something was not in my DNA, was to not apologize for everything. And she just does it and just flings herself forward. And it feels really powerful to know that she's in our corner too.
Yeah.
She was very happy to give Chris Kraus stuff, which was a really amazing thing in these conversations, to say that was a character and that was me, but you will have your own Chris Kraus. And
I'm sure that was a big load off.
Can I add one more thing before we end the night? There's one other category that's new for our world this year, which is that they finally made a half-hour cinematography category.
Right.
They did. Yes. Because for Transparent and Dick, we have a cinematographer named Jim Frona, who's fantastic and who's amazing.
And he directed one of the episodes.
And he directed one of the episodes. And as a cinematographer, you're always, competing against these gigantic one-hour shows, and he just has been getting lost in the nomination process. So I just want people to keep an eye out for that category for half-hour cinematography. And what else? Oh, one other thing I was thinking, even if you don't watch the show, I think it would be funny to vote for it just to hear people on the Emmys say, I love Dick, over and over and over. And one last thing I want to do is have other people who work on the show who are nominated stand up. I see Marie Schley, Darren Navarro, Kate Haight. We have some people here. Sonny Hodge. We have editors, and we'll all be socializing with you guys afterwards and glad-handing, pressing the flesh, talking about Dick. So join us afterwards.
So before we disperse...
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. Please resist the urge to rush the stage.
Don't rush.
Please don't rush the stage.
We're going to come out there.
File out very gently and safely through that door, and then go back through the front, and you'll get to experience all things Amazon, from production design, crafts, and of course food and drinks. So please
Amazing
join us.
Party. We'll all be there.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.